There's a starman waiting in the sky.
Lightyear. Just when you think there's nothing else they can do with the Toy Story franchise, Pixar seems to always have something up their sleeve to keep the story going and come out with something that could still feel as revolutionary as their first feature back in 1995. This time, however, the studio is doing something a little more different than just another straightforward sequel with Woody and the gang. They're creating a brand new spin-off that goes beyond the toys, but still keep the familiarity of the legendary spaceman himself, Buzz Lightyear. Now, you might be thinking that this is not something that's entirely new, since there was the series Buzz Lightyear of Star Command that already explored that idea 2 decades ago. Yes, I am well aware of Star Command, and it can be considered a nostalgic show with its own following, but then again...
Rangers, condition status.
Not good.
Excellent, let's roll.
It did leave a lot of room for improvement. And this is where Lightyear comes in, rebooting the entire idea of the Buzz Lightyear origin story in a way that feels a lot more epic, grand, and, well, official, coming directly from the studio that created Buzz. So now that we're going into a whole new infinity and beyond, will this be a story as great as with the toys? Or does this feel like a feature created by Mrs. Nesbit? Let's find out. The story. As Pixar is starting to become more experimental with their storytelling, they decided to have Lightyear be a blockbuster flick. The kind that the movie-watching experience is made for by emphasizing what you'd expect if Buzz Lightyear was an actual space ranger and not just the toy that we all know him for. Since this is a blockbuster, the movie makes sure to fill many scenes with all your sci-fi action needs like hyperspace traveling, battling deadly plants and giant insects, and escaping the wrath of Zurg and his army of robots, where its main goal is to have audiences to frequently be at the edge of their seats. I'll even say now that the action does its job well. While maybe not the most intense moments you'll find in a movie, they do a good job to keep viewers engaged and always set the danger high as the team tries to do everything they can in order to accomplish their mission.
We're being pursued by just a massive robot.
However, as a blockbuster, it also comes with a few setbacks. Because it prioritizes to be as action-packed as possible, it's noticeable how the story is often pushed to the side, something that is pretty uncommon for Pixar to do. And because the story doesn't take the highest priority, it leaves the writing to become vulnerable to flaws and for the narrative to sometimes feel unfocused with what kind of movie it wants to be. It's not often sure if it rather wants to show off another cool action scene, present the team trying to take down Zurg, or be about Buzz's personal struggle. Even the tone can feel like it's going for 2 different types of audiences, where one is a more serious space adventure in the style of Star Wars, and the other is a kid-friendly comedy. Granted, I will say that this does have some decent humor, and it can frequently make me chuckle, along with throwing in several nods and cute little references to some of Lightyear's moments in the Toy Story films. But with this movie, it's like the kind of action and comedy it has don't feel like they belong under the same film.
To infinity.
Are you trying to get me to pull your finger?
Don't fall for it.
No, not like that. It was...
But despite feeling like the direction can be all over the place, it does technically have a story that it wants to tell, and sometimes it can be quite good. I'll admit that I'm not a big fan of the main mission of defeating Zurg and his ship because that's the cliched plot of the ragtag team of unlikely underdogs who ultimately take down the big bad guy. I mean, didn't they already do that before in Buzz Lightyear of Star Command? But then you have Buzz's character arc. I will get more into this when I talk about the character, but it's honestly surprising how he can make this movie feel emotional. The film manages to have the audience connect with Lightyear himself, not because he's the recognizable icon with all the cool gear, but rather because of his determination to get his job done. And while some say this kind of passion is an admirable trait, The movie presents it in a way that is also his biggest flaw, and it knows how to frame it from Buzz's perspective to show how he feels when he realizes the consequences to his actions.
But, Socks, how long were we gone?
Meow, 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 meow. 62 years, 7 months, and 5 days.
What?
I'll give it that there are some good components in the writing. It's got a solid set of action, a strong emotional core, and decent comedy. Unfortunately, its big problem is that it wasn't able to combine all of its elements together in a consistent way, and it ends up making the story feel kind of unorganized and messy. The animation. Just like Buzz Lightyear himself, the animation is one of the strongest connections between this movie and the more recent Toy Story films. Why? Because of how they both try to achieve photorealism. One of the most praised elements of Toy Story 4 is how the animators at Pixar made the world around the toys both look and feel as real as they can, where despite all the living toys roaming around, the environment around them parallels our own to capture that believability that this is what our toys could be doing when no one's around. The same style can be found in Lightyear. However, instead of making its audience believe that toys can come alive, the movie takes place in an isolated planet where the entire Star Command has no choice but to call it their home due to a failed mission. It's obviously not the most colorful animated feature out there, but the point of the style is to achieve realism, and that's what helps make the feature feel immersive in many ways. Even with some of the sci-fi elements incorporated, like living plants and the bugs, there is an incredibly high amount of detail in the backgrounds to make it feel like people are making the most out of being marooned in a planet that, with the right adjustments, can be habitable. Not to mention highlighting the changes that it goes through over the years, as it starts with its nature being untouched, then having civilization incorporated, and then turn into a war zone by Zurg's army.
After a full year of being marooned on this planet, our first test flight is a go.
The same can also be said with the characters, where they also share the same Toy Story style. Sure, they don't have the most realistic designs with a bit of exaggerated and more rounded features, but it's the same look that was used to present Bonnie, Andy, and the other humans in Toy Story, thus giving it this cool connection to show how this movie fits in the Toy Story universe, along with some down-to-earth character animation that helps emphasize the people's emotions and show what they're going through. But of course, the biggest task for the animators with this is to pull off the action scenes. This is where the film needs to make the most with its sci-fi elements and truly make this feel like a space opera where danger is around every corner. Like I said before, the action is one of the better parts of the movie, making it more engaging with a higher sense of intensity thanks to its cinematography, great pacing, and solid effects. And with how the team nailed the realism in the picture, this also adds to the action where the audience is also brought in to experience the adventure with Buzz and the crew. And with the combining factors of the emphasis on realism, the strong use of detail, and the effective action scenes, it's the kind of animation that needs to be seen in the biggest format possible. The team at Pixar built this movie with the IMAX format in mind, where the more that you can soak in the details, the more immersive the experience will be. When a movie can have that kind of power where it becomes better the more you see how every small element worked together to create the big picture, that's when you know when the animation is a sight to behold. The characters. With the kind of disorganized script that this movie has, it would require a lot of work to make the characters stand out and present themselves as a solid team that the audience wants to follow along on their adventure. Obviously, it's not the writing that's doing them any favors, but against all odds, they do manage to come out as likable people. Along with the animation, one of the best things about this movie is the cast, where they give it their all and make the most out of their materials to make each personality enjoyable and make them feel genuine for the viewer to easily connect with, along with making the comedy fun thanks to some of the actors, especially Peter Son as Socks. And then there's Chris Evans, who took a big task of being the new voice of Buzz Lightyear. There was probably a lot of pressure on him to get it right because he's not Tim Allen, but he managed to be a worthy contributor to Buzz's legacy. He successfully captured both the familiarity of Allen's Lightyear as the well-known galactic hero and still made it feel fresh and have it be his own version by placing all the emotional layers of what he's going through in the film.
This suit means something. It's not just protecting your body, it's protecting the universe.
Ready, Captain Lightyear?
Ready as I'll ever be.
And as much as I criticize the feature's writing, I'll give it that one important factor that it did do well is crafting its version of Buzz, which I think is about on par with the Buzz in the Toy Story movies. As I previously stated, this Lightyear is a dedicated space ranger. He is so determined to complete his mission that you could say that he is passionate to a fault. He wants to get him and everyone out of that planet and achieve hyperspeed so bad that he's willing to go through a time warp where every attempt advances him years into the future. And yet, as the rest of Star Command waits for him to get it right, they have no choice but to live their lives on the planet, which is represented by Buzz's best friend, Alicia. What could be the biggest personal consequence for Buzz with his mission is that he never got to live a full life alongside his friend, where she went on to have a wife, a kid, and become a commander during his absence, taking a serious mental toll on him regarding how much he missed out. And yes, Alicia is the one who had the same-sex kiss. So just a quick warning that Lightyear is not for highly sensitive viewers who can't control their emotions because they're not intelligent enough to comprehend that LGBTQ+ people are normal people. But now that Buzz has traveled far forward into time, he is paired up with an inexperienced crew that are like the generic members of these adventures, and they each incorporate an element that makes the foreshadowing a little too obvious. But again, the performances of their respective actors does help make their personalities enjoyable. Izzy is Alicia's granddaughter who is the rookie that's the most determined to take down Zurg. Darby is the rebellious old woman that likes to get her hands dirty with weapons. Mo is the clumsy and cowardly recruit that often accidentally messes up. And Sux is the robotic assistant who provides most of the best jokes.
Are we going to crash?
No! Well, technically, yes.
That was utterly terrifying, and I regret having joined you.
But then you have the villain himself, the evil Emperor Zurg. I won't go into spoilers here, don't worry. But inside all that metallic armor lies a twist villain. Yeah, you thought Disney and Pixar were done with those, were you? Don't worry, I thought so too. Now, I understand the purpose to expand on Buzz's character arc and ultimately give a conclusion to the emotional core, but when it comes to who they are, while very unexpected, I still have no idea how they even exist in the first place. There is an idea, but the execution makes it so confusing and raise more questions than answers. The characters in this movie are much like the crew that Buzz ends up with. They're mostly unequipped for the job, but the actors do provide them with a strong personality that ultimately makes this adventure fun, and they give a bit of charm to their contribution. This may be Andy's favorite movie, but I don't think I could say the same on my part. However, I do understand why he loves it. Technically, Lightyear is the weakest film of the Toy Story franchise that's directly from Pixar, but still holds up well on its own as a sci-fi blockbuster. It doesn't have that masterfully crafted writing that the previous movies have, which unfortunately results in a disorganized story that lacks true focus and can be confusing at times, but it still provides plenty of strong aspects that makes this an enjoyable ride, like the beautiful animation, a great voice cast, some pleasant humor, a surprisingly effective emotional core, and some entertaining action scenes that will always keep you engaged from start to finish. If you're looking for a good action-packed feature and love the Toy Story films, then you'll definitely have a good time watching this. What I do recommend, though, is to go and see this in the biggest screen you can find, like an IMAX or something similar, because again, the movie is built for that major format, and it will be worth spending the extra money to get that better experience. However, maybe set your expectations a little lower for this because while it is an improvement from the 2000 version, this is not up to the standards of the Toy Story films. Then again, that is a virtually impossible standard for any movie to have, so that could be asking for too much there. But what is up to that standard is when you hit the subscribe button and discover even more reviews and other crazy videos like this. While the movie did not complete its mission flawlessly, it still accomplished what it tried to do, and the mission is still considered a success.
Good night, Socks.
Good night, Buzz.